The professionals who are thriving aren't necessarily the most talented. They aren't necessarily the most experienced either. They are the professionals who have made it easy for people to understand who they are, what they do, and why they need to be trusted. I'm Sylvia Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well-established marketing training and done-for-you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 128 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvia Garibaldi. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast by hitting the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes packed with actionable strategies to grow your practice. So I have a question for you. Have you ever noticed that some professionals seem to be just about everywhere? I mean, their names come up in conversations, people refer them, they're invited to speak, they're quoted in articles, and somehow they always seem to be attracting opportunities. Meanwhile, there are other professionals, equally talented, I must say, and equally experienced, sometimes even more qualified, and they are actually struggling to get noticed. And if we're being honest, that can be pretty frustrating because most of us were taught that if you do great work, treat people well, and build a strong reputation, the clients will come. And for a long time, that was true. But something has changed. Today, even when someone gets a referral to you, they don't immediately pick up the phone. They Google you, they look at your website, they check your LinkedIn profile, they read your reviews, and increasingly, they're asking AI platforms questions like, who is the best divorce mediator in my area? Who is known for resolving complex estate conflicts? So the reality is that potential clients, referral sources, and even AI platforms are all trying to answer the same question. And that question is, who can I trust? And if your expertise isn't visible online, if your reputation isn't showing up in the places that people are looking, you could be missing opportunities that you never even knew existed. But there is good news here. And this isn't about becoming an influencer, and it's not about posting every day, and it's certainly not about boasting or bragging. It's about making it easier for the right people to understand who you are, what you do, and why you're the person they should call when they need help. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to become the trusted expert that clients, referral sources, Google, and AI platforms recognize and recommend. And we're also going to talk about why some professionals are becoming more visible than ever, why others are quietly becoming invisible, and the practical steps that you can take to ensure that when someone goes looking for help, that they will find you. All right, let's get started. So I want to start with something important, and I've talked about this many times before, but trust still matters. In fact, I would argue that trust matters more today than it ever has. The problem isn't that trust has become less important. The problem is that the way trust gets built has changed, okay? Really important distinction. So for years, professionals built successful practices through referrals. You did great work. You treated people well. You built those strong relationships. You were diligent in building those relationships. And over time, people told other people about you, and the system worked really well. And to be clear, I think it still works. Referrals are still one of the most powerful ways to attract new clients, but here's what's changed. A referral is no longer the end of the decision-making process. It's actually the beginning. So think about the last time someone referred a professional to you. Maybe it was an accountant, maybe it was a contractor, maybe it was a lawyer. Did you immediately pick up the phone and hire them? Probably not. You likely did what most people do today. You looked them up, you visited their website, you checked LinkedIn, you read reviews, You wanted to learn more before making a decision. So potential clients are doing exactly the same thing with your services. Even when a trusted colleague gives them your name, even when a friend recommends you, even when another professional tells them that you're excellent, they still do their homework. They still want reassurance, and they still want lots of social proof that you're the right fit. And I think that's where many professionals get caught off guard because they assume the referral has done all the heavy lifting. But today's clients, they want more. They want evidence. They want confidence. They want certainty. So let me give you an example. Let's say a family lawyer refers a mediator to a client. The client goes home that evening, searches up the mediator's name. What do they find? Do they find a website that clearly explains who that mediator helps and how they work? Do they find articles that demonstrate expertise? What about a LinkedIn profile that reflects professionalism and credibility? Or do they find very little information at all? So all these things matter, not because people are looking for perfection, because they're not. They're actually looking for plain and simple reassurance. They're trying to answer a very simple question. Can I trust this person? It's no longer just clients asking that question. Referral sources are asking the same question. Before introducing someone to their clients, many professionals want to feel confident that they're making the right recommendation. So they're also looking you up. They're also reading your LinkedIn articles and social media posts. They're also reviewing your website because they want to understand what you're known for. And we know this as well, that conference organizers do the same thing. Journalists do this. Potential strategic partners do this. Everyone is researching everyone. And now there's another player entering the picture, and that is AI. So whether we like it or not, people are increasingly using AI platforms to help them find information. They're asking questions like, who are the leading experts in workplace mediation in XYZ city? Or who specializes in high conflict divorce mediation in XYZ city or country? Clearly, people are doing their research and they are going to AI for this. So AI isn't replacing referrals and it's not replacing relationships. We know that, but it is becoming a place where people do look for answers. And what this means for you as a professional is very important because your expertise can no longer live only in your head. It can't live only in conversations, and it can't live only in the excellent work that you've done for clients over the years. It needs to be visible. And guess what? Being visible means you need to share information. You need to educate your audience. And that means that you are sharing some of your most valuable content to the people and professionals that need your help. Because if people can't find evidence of your expertise, they're forced to make decisions based on whatever information they can find. So years ago, you wouldn't see professionals writing social media posts or blogs in detail and doing videos because no one really wanted to reveal that much information. They felt that that was just information that they should save when they have the prospect in their office or when that prospect becomes a client. Not anymore. Things have changed. We are living in the information age. This means you need to share as much valuable information as possible so that AI can find you and so that the people and professionals that are looking for your help will be able to find you as well. So I recently spoke with a professional who told me this. She said, Sylvia, almost all of my business comes from referrals. And I said, well, that's fantastic. That's actually pretty amazing. And then I asked a follow-up question. I said, what happens after someone gets your name? And there was silence because, like many professionals, they never had really thought about that. They'd spent years building a reputation, but very little time thinking about how that reputation shows up online. And I think that's the shift we're seeing today. The professionals who are thriving aren't necessarily the most talented. They aren't necessarily the most experienced either. They are the professionals who have made it easy for people to understand who they are, what they do, and why they need to be trusted. And they've made it so easy for clients to say yes. And they've made it easy for referral sources to recommend them. And when that happens, you can bet Google and AI platforms start to understand their expertise and they start sharing that information in their platforms. So in other words, they've made trust visible. And I think that's the key because trust is still the foundation of every successful practice. I just think the difference today is that trust often gets built long before that first conversation ever happens. I think the professionals that are becoming more visible while others are quietly becoming invisible is not, as I said, because they're smarter, and it's not because they have more credentials. In fact, some of the professionals who are struggling the most with visibility are among the most experienced people in their field. Let that settle in for a moment. You did hear me right. It's the person with all those credentials that may not necessarily have the most visibility. So, hear me out on this. They've spent years building expertise, years helping clients, solving difficult problems, years earning the trust of the people that they work with. And yet, for some reason, they're finding it harder to get noticed. Can you relate to that? And the question is, why? Because expertise and visibility are not the same thing. You can be incredibly good at what you do and still be difficult to find. So let me give you a quick example of what I mean. Imagine two mediators. Both are highly skilled, both have strong reputations, both genuinely care about helping people. This is their passion. And so the first mediator has 25 years of experience. Clients love her, lawyers respect her. She's helped hundreds of families navigate difficult divorce situations, but she has not updated her website in years. She very rarely posts on LinkedIn. She hasn't written articles or blogs. She's not out there speaking on stages or being interviewed on podcasts. And most of her expertise exists mostly in her head and in the conversations she's had over the years. Now let's take the second mediator. Also very highly skilled, writing articles, speaking at conferences, sharing insights on LinkedIn. She's appearing on podcasts. She's contributing to professional publications. She's creating content that helps people understand what she knows. Now, here's the question. If someone is searching online for a mediator, if a referral source wants to learn more before making an introduction, or if an AI platform is trying to determine who is known for a particular area of expertise, which mediator is more likely to show up? You bet, the second one, right? And it's not because she's better, but it's because she's easier to find. And that's an important distinction. The market can only respond to what it can see. And today, visibility matters more than ever. And for those of you listening to this podcast, you know this already. But I think one of the biggest misconceptions professionals have is that if they're good enough, people will eventually find them. Well, that assumption has gone right out the window. And I understand why people think that, because for years they've built successful practices through referrals alone. And so they think that people should just continue to refer to them. But consumer behavior has changed. Today's clients behave differently. Today's referral sources behave differently. Even when someone receives your name from a trusted colleague, they don't stop there. As I said, they do the investigation, they do their research, they verify. And they also look at reviews, and they look at anything that they can find online to learn about you. They're looking for evidence, right? Evidence that you understand their problem, that you've helped people like them before, and that they can trust you. Once again, that's where many professionals run into trouble, not because they lack expertise, but because the market doesn't know they exist. So here's another common thing I hear from a lot of professionals, and that is, Sylvia, I do not like self-promotion. Well, I'm going to be real with you. Neither do I. And most professionals don't. But visibility is not self-promotion. Visibility is education. It's helping people understand how you can help them. It's sharing your knowledge. It's allowing them to see themselves in what you have to say so that they can recognize that you know what they're going through. You know what the struggles are. And that's super important. And I think this information, it provides clarity and it makes your expertise accessible to people who need it. And I think that's another reason professionals become invisible, is that they're trying to be everything to everyone. So when I ask someone what they do, they may say something like, oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm a mediator, I'm a divorce professional. And sure, those descriptions are not wrong, but they're not memorable. So I want you to compare it to something like, I help high net worth families resolve complex divorce and estate disputes. Or I help organizations resolve workplace conflict in hospitals and universities before it becomes a legal issue. So think about that. Notice the difference. The examples are much clearer. They're specific. They're easy to understand. They're easy to remember. And I think that's important because referrals happen when people know exactly what you're known for. So if a colleague meets someone who needs help, you really want your name to immediately come to mind. And it's not because you're the only option, it's because you're the clearest option. And that clarity is really what creates visibility. I think that's super important. I think that the professionals who are thriving right now, they understand this incredibly well. And they're not spending all day on social media and they're not trying to become influencers. They're simply making it easier in a structured way for people to understand who they are, what they do, and why they matter and how they can help them. I really do believe that that's a fundamental skill that every professional needs to learn because once you understand that visibility is not about bragging, it's about making your expertise easier to find. And I think the whole conversation changes when you think that way. So, we've kind of talked about how trust is being built differently today and why some professionals are becoming invisible. So, let's talk about something that surprises a lot of people, and that is Google, AI platforms, referral sources, and potential clients are all looking for many of the same things. They're all trying to answer one question. Can I trust this person? And when you really think about it, it makes total sense. So let's imagine that you're a family lawyer and a client asks you for the name of a mediator. You're probably not going to randomly pick someone. You're going to think about who you've heard good things about, who you've worked with, who has a strong reputation, who seems knowledgeable, who is respected by other professionals. So, in other words, you're looking for the evidence that this person knows what they're doing. Now, let's imagine a potential client is looking for help. Guess what? They're doing the exact same thing. They're looking for evidence. They're looking for signs that you've helped people like them before. They're looking for proof that you're experienced. And they're looking for reasons to feel really comfortable to reach out to you. And AI platforms are doing something very similar as well, because they're gathering information from different sources online and trying to determine who appears to have expertise in that particular area. And I think that brings me to something very important. Most professionals think that expertise alone creates trust. And while part of that may be true, expertise that nobody can see can't help people make decisions. So think about it that way. If someone told you they were an expert golfer, you could believe them. But if you saw them win tournaments, teach lessons, write about golf, and get recommended by other golfers, what happens? Your confidence skyrockets. And the same thing happens in professional services. People don't just trust expertise. They trust evidence of expertise. And that evidence can show up in a myriad of ways. As we've talked about before, it could be an article that you've written. It could be something that you submitted to an association as an article. It could be a webinar that you've hosted. It could be a podcast that you were a guest on, a testimonial, a media interview, a professional award, or maybe you volunteer and you have a leadership position in an association. These are all signs that create trust, and it becomes a trust signal. So each signal tells people this person knows what they're talking about. So I hope that's making sense. All right, so I think one of my favorite ways to think about this is, in terms of looking at the evidence, is that every piece of content that you create becomes a digital breadcrumb. Let me explain what I mean by that. Every article is a breadcrumb. Every webinar that you put on is a breadcrumb. Every speaking engagement, every LinkedIn post. Over time, these breadcrumbs, they create a trail. And that trail tells a story. It tells people, this is what I do, this is who I help, and this is what I'm known for. And this is why people trust me. But those things that I just said, this is what I do, this is who I help, this is what I'm known for, this is why people trust me. Those four things need to be on repeat, meaning they need to be consistently said over and over again through different channels, through different ways, sharing different examples, but it needs to be done consistently. I want to share something with you that I see come up time and time again. Many professionals I speak to know exactly who they want to attract, but where things break down isn't clarity, it's actually implementation. So they're not sure how to translate that into messaging, how to stay visible, or how to turn that visibility into actual client inquiries. So if this sounds familiar, I created a step-by-step guide to help you work right through this. This free guide walks you through how to define your ideal clients, identify the right referral partners, understand where they're actually looking, including AI, and most importantly, how to turn all of that into consistent action. You can download your free guide at www.sgandassociates.ca/free-guide. Link is also in the show notes. Now, before you start thinking you need to become a full-time content creator, let me stop you right there because that's not what I'm saying. You don't need to be everywhere and posting every single day. But what you do need is enough evidence online that people can understand your expertise. Because what we're seeing is that the professionals who are winning right now aren't necessarily the loudest, as I've already explained. They are the ones that are actually the easiest to understand. They're the easiest to explain, and they're the easiest to trust. I can't tell you how many conversations I have with professionals. And when I look at their content or I look at their LinkedIn profile or I look at their presentation, I have to basically say to them, this isn't clear. This is too complicated to understand. But my job is to make sure that their message is clear and that they are making an impact and that referral partners and clients will find them and will want to do business with them because they understand what they're trying to say. There's an expression that says, a confused buyer never buys. Super important and really meaningful. So here's my next thought. If trust signals matter so much, what should you actually be building? Where should you focus your time and energy? And most professionals really, they don't need more marketing tactics. They just need a clear plan. And I want to talk about what this plan looks like. I'm going to dive into the 5 visibility assets that I think every professional should be building. But before I do that, if you're listening to this episode and you're realizing that you have the expertise, but you're not sure whether you're visible enough, or you're wondering why competitors with less experience seem to be getting more attention, more opportunities, or more referrals, then I encourage you to book a free strategy call with me. And on this call, we're going to look at your current visibility, your positioning, your online presence, and how you're showing up to potential clients, referral sources, Google, and AI platforms. Sometimes the problem is not your expertise. Sometimes it's simply that the market doesn't fully understand it yet. So if this is you, you can book a free strategy call by clicking the link in the show notes. Okay, so at this point, you might be thinking, all right, Sylvia, I understand why visibility matters. I understand why trust is being built differently today. So where do I start? And I think that's a really fair question because one of the biggest mistakes professionals make is trying to do everything. I see them wanting to start a podcast. They launch a newsletter. They post every day on LinkedIn. They create a YouTube channel. Then someone tells them they need SEO. And before long, they're overwhelmed by doing none of it particularly well. And I don't want that for you. The goal isn't to be everywhere. The goal is to be visible in the places that matter most. And after having worked many years with very successful lawyers, mediators, divorce professionals, I've found that there are 5 visibility assets that really can make a difference. So I'm going to walk you through. The first one is positioning. And honestly, it could be the most important one of all. Before someone can recommend you, they have to understand you. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's where many professionals get stuck. And when I ask what they do, I get the same answers. I'm an arbitrator or I'm a mediator. And those are job titles. Those are not positioning statements. Positioning answers a different question. What are you known for? Who do you help? What problem do you solve? So instead of saying I'm a mediator, you could say something like, I help high net worth families resolve complex divorce and estates disputes without going to court. So that's not a title. And what I just said is a specialty. And specialties are easier to remember. They're easier to refer. They're easier for Google, AI, and potential clients to understand. The second visibility asset is LinkedIn. And before you roll your eyes, I want you to hear me out on this. Obviously, if you've been following with this podcast for a while, you know that it is one of the first place professionals go when they're searching for someone. So think about your own behavior. When someone sends you a name, what do? You look them up. And if they're a professional, the first place you're going to go is also LinkedIn. You want to learn about that person. I think it's really important to make sure that that profile is current, up to speed, and people can learn from you. And I think the third visibility asset is what I call your authority asset. And that's the thing that allows you to demonstrate expertise consistently over time. And I've dedicated some podcast episodes to this, but it could be a webinar series. It could be a newsletter, a book. But I think the mistake many professionals make is that they try to build all of them at once. You don't need 5 authority assets. You just need one thing that you can commit to consistently. Some clients of ours, they create a video every day or every week, one a week, and that becomes their asset, their marketing asset that they deliver every single week. For me, my marketing asset is this podcast. Every podcast gives me an opportunity to share what I've learned, help professionals solve problems, and build trust at scale. So my question to you is, what's your version of that? I want you to think about that and commit to creating one. The fourth visibility asset is third-party credibility. And I think this one's incredibly powerful because people tend to trust what others say about you more than what you say about yourself. So think about it. If I were to tell you I'm an expert, you'd probably say, oh, that's nice. But if a respected association invites me to speak, or if I'm interviewed on a podcast, or if a publication quotes me, or if clients leave testimonials, suddenly the credibility feels different. It's no longer self-declared, it's validated. And that's why things like speaking engagements, podcast interviews, testimonials, media coverage, awards, and association leadership roles are so valuable because every single one of them becomes a trust signal. Okay, I hope this is making sense. And it's another reason for someone to feel confident choosing you. The fifth visibility asset is your website. Now, here's something I want you to remember. Your website doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be clear. When someone lands on it, they should immediately understand who you are, what you do, and who you help, right? What are the problems you solve? And so I think this really brings me to the final question of this episode, and that is, what are the professionals doing today that will put them in the strongest position over the next 3 to 5 years? That's what I want to leave you with, because the professionals who thrive over the next 5 years are not necessarily going to be the smartest. And we see this already, right? They're not necessarily going to have the most credentials, and they're not necessarily going to have the biggest marketing budgets. They're going to be the professionals who make it easy for people to trust them. So think about everything we've talked about today. Clients are researching differently. Referral sources are researching differently. Google is evaluating your information differently. AI platforms are becoming another place where people look for answers. The common thread running through all of this is trust. So remember that, please. The question is no longer, am I good at what I do? Most people listening to this podcast are already very good at what they do. The question is, can people see that you're good at what you do? And that's the difference. So one of the biggest shifts I'm seeing right now is that expertise alone is no longer enough. Expertise matters, don't get me wrong. In fact, it is the foundation, but without visibility, it's becoming increasingly difficult for the market to recognize. If you're listening and wondering, where do I start? Let me make this very simple. Don't try to do everything. Don't redesign your website tomorrow, and don't launch that podcast next week. Simply what I want you to do is to ask yourself 3 questions. So first, I want you to ask, what do I want to be known for? And it's not everything, it's one thing. What's the area where you want your name to immediately come to mind? Second, if someone researched me online today, would they clearly understand that expertise? Would they know who I help? Would they know what problems I solve? And would they know why someone should trust me? And third, what is that one visibility asset I can start building consistently? The ones I talked about. Maybe it's a webinar series, a newsletter, or maybe you're going to be speaking on an ongoing basis. Pick one and please commit to it, because visibility is not built in a week. Authority is not built in a month, and trust is built over time. So I'll leave you with this. The professional who makes it easy for clients, referral sources, Google, and AI platforms to understand who they help, what they do, and why they're trusted, those are the ones that are going to win. Thanks for tuning in today, and if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes packed with actionable strategies to grow your practice. See you in the next episode.